Every man once dreamed of being a martial master, practicing justice and loyalty, living as a hero, and journeying across the world. The sound they created was unlike that of any ordinary man. Everyone longed for such a life, yet not all could experience it. For this reason, boys often fantasized about it even more. A young man was shown hammering iron, working tirelessly until his creation was complete. What he forged was revealed to be a set of acupuncture needles. He handed them over to a customer, thanking him for waiting, and explained that these were the needles he had ordered. This young man was Tang Mujin, a 20-year-old physician. The narration declared that this was the kind of sound that could awaken the dreams of a boy and turn him into a hero. The man receiving the needles studied them carefully. After examining them, he asked Tang Mujin if he truly was a physician. Tang Mujin confirmed it, and the man unexpectedly requested to become his disciple. Tang Mujin was left in shock at the sudden proposal. The narration revealed that on that day, he heard the sound of his life changing. The story then shifted back to a few months earlier. A quiet physician's morning was described. Medical scrolls were copied until the rooster crowed. Preparations for patients were finished before breakfast, and life repeated in silence. That silence was what had refined his father's skills. Tang Mujin wondered if he too would someday reach the same level as his father. He was then seen running outside to gather herbs. On the way, he greeted people warmly until he accidentally collided with a man. The stranger responded rudely, scolding him for not watching where he was going. Frightened, Tang Mujin quickly apologized sincerely and admitted his mistake. The man only laughed harshly and said Tang Mujin needed to be taught how to behave properly. He then beat him mercilessly. The narration reminded the reader that even then, Tang Mujin still dreamed of being a hero. Later, Tang Mujin appeared with two friends. His face was bruised from the beating, and the two boys burst into laughter at his state. One of them mocked him, saying he should have asked for a hit on the other eye so the colors would match. This boy was Zhang Guek, another 20-year-old who worked as a herb gatherer. Zhang Guek continued to tease Tang Mujin, asking if he wanted him to give him another black eye. Annoyed and angry, Tang Mujin lashed out and began to hit Zhang Guek. Zhang Guek cried out in pain, shouting that he had been poked in the eye, and telling Tang Mujin to stop. After their scuffle, both were left exhausted and hungry. Zhang Guek asked if Tang Mujin wanted to eat something good. Tang Mujin agreed, and Zhang Guek revealed a mushroom. At first, Tang Mujin was confused, then quickly grew irritated, believing Zhang Guek was still trying to mess with him. He scolded him for not knowing when to stop. Zhang Guek hurriedly explained that this mushroom was actually very expensive one that could let someone experience special kinds of dreams. Tang Mujin was surprised, and Zhang Guek declared that with this mushroom, one could even dream of becoming the king of kings or an ascended sage. Without giving him a choice, Zhang Guek forced Tang Mujin to eat it. He explained that the last time he had some, he had dreamed of becoming a pinnacle realm martial artist. In that dream, he had fought against 100 martial artists of the King sect, and felt every sensation as if it were real. He assured him that the mushroom's poison did no harm to the body. Tempted by the idea, Tang Mujin grew greedy and ate the entire mushroom. Zhang Guek shouted in shock, warning him not to eat it all. "What's wrong?" Tang Mujin asked. "If one bite can grant the experience of a pinnacle martial artist whose body and sword are one, then surely eating it all will allow me to become the master of swords himself." Frustrated, Zhang Guek muttered that the mushroom's effects should not have kicked in so quickly. He reminded Tang Mujin that it was his body, and he would not be responsible if anything went wrong. Tang Mujin reassured him confidently, saying that as a physician, he knew how to judge such things. Zhang Guek scoffed, saying he did not. He then added that the effects should appear soon, so they would wait. Soon Tang Mujin's mouth began to foam, and he repeated again and again, "I am a physician." Then his mind shifted into another state. He began to narrate that embers tickled his skin like butterflies and that the sparks from the first strike of the hammer were always wondrous. He declared himself Tang Mujin, who had hammered iron as a blacksmith his entire life, and that this moment of creation never ceased to amaze him. Another man was then revealed hammering iron. He suddenly looked confused, asking himself, "Am I Tang Mujin?" He corrected himself, saying his name was Uyezi, the unparalleled master of smithing under the heavens. He wondered why he had just dreamed of being a physician. Realizing it must have been fatigue, he shook off the daze, determined to focus. He had been commissioned by the King of Yu to forge 5 master swords, and he swore to dedicate his all to them, declaring in the name of Uyezi that these would be his life's greatest work. The names of the 5 swords were revealed: Zhanlu, Jik, Shengxi, Yujin, and finally Chunjin. They were described as 5 master swords. They were forged by the combined will of heaven and man over 20 years. Their glory was praised, for they embodied the dreams of mankind and fulfilled the will of the heavens. The scene shifted to the heavens, where immortals were celebrating. Pouring heavenly peach wine, they welcomed their newest immortal, cheering for Uyezi and declaring it a grand day as he reached paradise. In their joy, one immortal accidentally spilled wine on the master, and the scene cut abruptly. It then returned to Tang Nugent, who was lying unconscious on the ground. A furious man was shouting that he had been told this was the best physician in Chengdu. He had trusted the governor's recommendation, but now, seeing Nugent collapse, he declared that such a novice physician, unable to even perform proper acupuncture, would be forced into retirement. As he stormed away, John Goik remained behind, making mocking faces at the official. He muttered that the man was an arrogant fool, just like most government officials. Nugent, however, could not understand what had just happened. He felt lost, questioning what had occurred only moments before. John Goik explained that the sun was already setting, that Nugent had been rambling nonsense while high on the mushroom, and that he had suddenly insisted on returning to the clinic. He told him it was a miracle they had managed to reach home without incident. John Goik warned him not to tell his father about the mushroom and then left angrily. Hearing this, Nugent felt unsettled. His memory of the events was blank, and he wondered if everything that had happened was nothing more than a dream. When he finally reached home, he apologized to his father for arriving late. His father welcomed him warmly, but Nugent, still shaken, asked about the man who had just left their house in a rage. He was referring to the same official who had stormed out earlier. As he noticed the needles, a sharp headache struck him. The pressure grew unbearable, and within it, he felt a strange sensation and unfamiliar emotion mixed with the waves of pain. He wondered if it was frustration, but he couldn't understand what it was directed at. His father, Lai Chong, saw his distress and asked if his head hurt. Nugent, trying to calm himself, denied it and said it was nothing. But the thought of that man still troubled him, and he asked again who he was. His father explained that the man was the governor's military attendant. He had complained that his acupuncture was too painful because the new needles were thicker than the old ones. Surprised, Nugent insisted that he had tested them himself earlier that morning. His father then showed him the needles, saying the new set had been purchased 2 weeks ago after the older ones had bent. He told Nugent to take a closer look. As Nugent examined them, another wave of unease washed over him. He realized he was hearing something strange from the needles, a sound that had not been there when he had tested them before. The pressure built again, clouding his mind. His father asked repeatedly what was wrong, concerned by his condition. Nugent could barely endure it any longer. His body shook under the weight of headaches and chills. Li Chong concluded that he must have caught a cold, but Nugent cried out that it was too noisy, the sound overwhelming his senses. Li Chong tried to ease him, offering to brew medicine. Yet Nugent stopped him suddenly, grabbing the needles from his hands. His eyes burned with a new intensity, a spark unlike any he'd had before. In that moment, Nugent declared the truth to himself. It was the sound that awakens heroes. It was the sound he had heard that day. The next scene followed Nugent as he walked through the market, holding 2 needles in his hands, an old and one new, both belonging to his father. His expression carried the weight of confusion and irritation. Thoughts swirled in his mind as he admitted to himself that whenever he saw a poorly crafted item, it began to irritate him. Until yesterday, he couldn't even tell what was shoddy. But now, because of this strange new ability, everything around him appeared cheap and worthless. The constant awareness gnawed at him, making him restless. Troubled, he turned his eyes to the old needle in his hand, and a shift of emotion crossed his face. Despite the turmoil, he felt a sudden sense of refreshment just by looking at it. He recognized it as the pride of Sichuan, crafted with the unmatched skill of the blacksmith. So, a sense of quiet satisfaction rose within him, and he held the needle with respect, admiring it deeply. Yet soon another thought unsettled him. How did he suddenly know all of this? Where had this knowledge come from? His gaze moved to the new needle, and the unease returned. He suspected it, too, had been made by blacksmith soak, yet something about it felt different. A quiet worry lingered within him as he wondered if this difference was something serious. The scene then shifted as Nugent stepped into a sword shop. Rows of blades shimmered in the light, their varied forms and craftsmanship catching his eye. His earlier irritation faded, replaced by a sense of excitement. He admired the swords with delight. His hands were drawn to one particular blade. The moment he held it close, all the irritation weighing him down seemed to vanish. He felt a sense of peace and wonder. Overwhelmed by the exquisite craftsmanship, he knew this, too, was the work of blacksmith soak, and he marveled at the subtle changes in the master's artistry. In the shop, people began to glance strangely at Nugent as he lunged toward a sword with sudden intensity. Holding it tightly, he reflected on the dream he'd had of Oyezi. He wondered if that dream had given him the ability to recognize a true master's work. With this realization, he felt as though he could see the entirety of blacksmith sook's process at a glance. He questioned whether the dream had granted him insight he never had before, but such thoughts troubled him, for a dream was supposed to be only a dream. Learning blacksmithing through a dream seemed impossible. Determined to confirm his doubts, Nugent stepped further into the shop. He resolved to go directly to blacksmith sook himself and discover what had truly happened. Inside, a large man shouted angrily at him. This man was Sook Jaisong, the son of blacksmith Sook. He accused Nugent of disliking his needle, claiming that despite not being as skilled as his father, he had still spent 20 years at the forge. He demanded not to be treated like an amateur. Mujin, unsettled by the man's anger, quickly clarified that he had never doubted his skill. Inwardly, Mujin realized the elder blacksmith Sook had retired, leaving only a few of his masterworks behind. The new needle must have been crafted by Jae-sung himself. Jae-sung, still upset, admitted how difficult it was to live up to his father's name. Even the people of the clinic now dared to belittle him. With sharp defiance, he challenged Mujin to find his father's works among the swords displayed in the shop. Confidently, he declared that Mujin should then point out what he lacked in comparison. In his mind, Jae-sung believed there was no way Mujin could ever distinguish between good and bad swords. Yet, to his shock, Mujin picked out two of his father's swords instantly. Jae-sung's thoughts froze in disbelief. He realized Mujin had immediately identified his father's work, and the difference was truly that great. He admitted aloud that most people overlooked these blades because of their simple designs. Mujin's eye was sharper than he had imagined. Mujin silently acknowledged that he had expected this outcome. If he had been wrong, Jae-sung would never have spared the chance to mock him. Instead, this moment convinced him that the dream of Uyazi had not been an ordinary one. Impressed, Jae-sung admitted he had misjudged Mujin. At first, he had believed him to be just a picky customer, but now he understood why Mujin disliked his needle. He had asked Mujin to find his father's works, and he had selected each one correctly. Jae-sung confessed that Mujin's eye might even surpass his own. With such sharp vision, he argued, you cannot remain a mere observer. There is only one answer. You must craft something yourself. With that, Jae-sung placed a heavy hammer into Mujin's hands. Mujin hesitated, gripped by nervousness. But Jae-sung mocked him, threatening to craft another needle himself if Mujin thought it was impossible. Spurred by the challenge, Mujin steadied himself. He declared that he might never again have the chance to act as a blacksmith, so he would take it now. And so, he began. Mujin raised the hammer, and struck the metal with determination. Though nervous, he relied on the knowledge he had gained from the dream. As he worked, he compared it to asking a patient to prepare their own medicine and needles. Still, he wanted to try, and to his surprise it worked. Excitement stirred in him as his blows grew sharper. Jae-sung, watching closely, was stunned. He had expected to laugh at Mujin's clumsy attempts, but instead, the hammer blows were flawless. Mujin worked like a natural blacksmith, just like Jae-sung's father, who had spent his life at the forge. The sound of metal rang out like a clear musical note. Jae-sung wondered if he was witnessing the reincarnation of Uyazi himself. This was not mere talent, it was something far greater. His thoughts raced with excitement as he silently urged for more. He wanted to see the striking, quenching, tempering, sharpening, and even the making of the handle and sheath. He longed to witness the complete weapon taking form in Mujin's mind. As his thoughts swelled, Mujin completed a sword. He was about to let it drop to the ground, but Jae-sung caught it just in time. Mujin calmly told him to melt the piece down. Jae-sung was so mesmerized by Mujin's forging that he froze in place, but Mujin's voice rang out again with renewed determination. My arms are warmed up now. It's time to make a proper needle. Jae-sung's eyes gleamed with excitement as he watched closely, though his intense stare made Mujin slightly uneasy. Still, Mujin worked with full focus, crafting the needle with care. The scene shifted. Using the new needle, Mujin's father treated an old man, who immediately felt relief. Another old man scoffed in disbelief, questioning how it could not hurt. Soon after, even he was treated and felt great relief. The new needle allowed treatments to be carried out with remarkable effectiveness. Word spread quickly. Crowds of patients began to gather at Mujin's home, seeking relief from their ailments. The Tang family's name grew widely respected. Even wary travelers from distant places visited to recover their strength. One day, two travelers spoke to each other about the Tang family's rising fame. Nearby, an old man listened silently to their words before walking away. The following morning, the Tang clinic opened to yet another crowd. The line stretched long, but tension arose when a man tried to cut through. Someone shouted angrily at him for breaking the line, but the old man who had arrived earlier did not respond. The angered man grew louder, but suddenly froze when the old man pointed a sword at his neck. Mujin's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. A quarrel had broken out between martial artists. The old man declared he would show the truth firsthand. With a swift motion, he struck the man's chest, drawing blood. Mujin rushed forward immediately, stopping the bleeding before it grew worse. In that moment, he noticed that the cut had only pierced the skin, leaving bones and organs untouched. It was clear to him that the old man was a master of martial arts. The old man, meanwhile, mocked the wounded man. He laughed at him for crying like a child and fainting from such a small cut. He assured him it was only a scratch, and that a few days of medicine would heal it completely. Yet with a smirk, he remarked that such care would only be possible if this were a proper clinic. At that moment, Mujin remembered the name that echoed in his mind, the physician killer. This eccentric man was none other than Li Gui. Mujin thought of his father, recalling how watching him work always left a deep impression. His father might not have been the best physician in the lands, but he was like a strong tree, holding firmly to its place. He was not flashy, but resilient. From him, Mujin had learned the proper attitude of a physician. The man now standing before him was the complete opposite of everything he had learned. He was known as the eccentric physician, a martial artist who had reached the pinnacle realm and roamed the lands. Among the 3 greatest physicians under the heavens, this eccentric man decided the fates of others with both his sword and his medical skill. Stories said his fickle murders never discriminated between good and evil, and he was branded a serial killer who had slain several dozen innocent physicians across the Jianhu. A sudden realization struck Mujin, and he feared for his father's safety. He saw Li Guike heading toward his father's chamber and, filled with dread, he rushed forward, calling out for his father to be safe. At that moment, an instructor from the Qingqing sect, Jin Guan, placed a hand on his shoulder and told him it was inevitable. Mujin, tense and anxious, turned to the head instructor, desperate for clarity. He wondered aloud if the branch leader could stop this man, but Jin Guan calmly explained that even his own master would refuse to stand against the eccentric physician. Mujin protested, reminding Jin Guan that the man was a criminal. But Jin Guan revealed that his master owed his life to the eccentric physician. Shocked by the revelation, Mujin thought in disbelief that the eccentric physician had once saved the Qingqing sect branch leader's life. His heart sank, and he sat down with a heavy feeling of despair, worrying endlessly about his father. Jin Guan tried to console him, explaining that though the eccentric physician was strange, he was not an evil man. Just then, Li Guike pushed open the door to the chamber. Mujin and Jin Guan froze, tense with anticipation. But Mujin quickly noticed that Li Guike's clothes were spotless. Relief washed over him, knowing his father was unharmed. Li Guike stepped forward, placed a hand on Mujin's shoulder, and casually mentioned that after speaking with physician Tang, he had heard about a skilled blacksmith nearby. He asked Mujin if he knew where to find this craftsman. Mujin felt the air leave his chest but admitted that he did. Li Guike pressed further, insisting that he lead the way. Hesitant and uneasy, Mujin agreed. As he walked ahead, the eccentric physician pressed the tip of his sword against Mujin's back, draining whatever courage remained in him. Li Guike's unsettling smile only deepened the tension as he urged Mujin to move quickly, claiming he was busy. Mujin obeyed reluctantly. Soon, Mujin led him to Jaisong. Li Guike looked at the craftsman in surprise upon learning that the boy himself had made the weapon. Mujin confirmed it, and the eccentric physician erupted into laughter. He remarked on the strangeness of Sichuan, amazed that the son of a physician knew blacksmithing. Jaisong leaned close and whispered to Mujin, asking who this old man was. Mujin quietly replied that he was a martial artist. Still laughing, Li Guike continued his praise. Li Guike dismissed the matter of who crafted the needle, saying it didn't matter. He admitted it had been a long time since he had laughed so freely. Then he asked for Mujin's name, confirming that it was Tang Mujin, and ordered him to craft 30 acupuncture needles. He tossed down a gold ingot as payment, leaving both Mujin and Jaisong stunned. Mujin gathered his composure and thanked him, suggesting he get something to eat while the work was completed. He promised the needles would be ready before sunset. Li Guike, startled, questioned the claim. He noted that even renowned blacksmiths required months to craft such tools, yet Mujin was saying they would be ready today. Mujin stood firm, insisting he could finish them by the end of the day. Li Guike challenged his claim, remarking that they were not to be low-quality products, and that Mujin had clearly not prepared them in advance. He questioned how a physician's child could make such bold promises, and warned him not to let greed misguide him. Despite the doubts, Mujin declared that he would start immediately. He promised to deliver work of a higher quality than his father's, fresh from the furnace, assuring him that there was no need to worry. He believed he could truly do it, and Jaisong backed him up, assuring Li Guike that Mujin was capable. Li Guike then sat down, and the sight of his sword made Mujin's heart tremble. He thought to himself that he had almost forgotten how dangerous this man really was. With a laugh, Li Guike reminded him to keep his word. Mujin agreed and immediately began the task. As he worked, Mujin reflected on the process. Crafting acupuncture needles was grueling, requiring the creation of large quantities of wire, selecting only the finest pieces, and grinding them down to the sharpest point. The needles owned by his father were not born from luck, but from immense skill. His thoughts trailed to Li Guike, noting how fit his body seemed for a man known as a physician. Watching closely, Li Guike became impressed, astonished by the dedication and effort with which Mujin carried out the work. Time passed, and eventually, Mujin completed the requested set of needles. He presented them to Li Guike, who once again rewarded him with a gold ingot. Then, to his surprise, Li Guike asked if he wished to become his disciple. Mujin hesitated nervously, and asked why such an offer would be made to him. Li Guike explained that he should not remain confined to a small town as a physician for the rest of his life, questioning whether the idea didn't appeal to him. Mujin admitted that he was interested, but he also had duties at the clinic and had only just begun working at the forge. He expressed doubt about what he could truly learn from Li Guike. With another laugh, Li Guike revealed that there were 2 things he could teach. Curious, Mujin asked what they were. Without warning, Li Guike demonstrated his skill, slicing a stone behind them into shape with only a needle and striking Jisum's shoulder with another so subtly that none of them had noticed until it happened. The display had a touch of magic to it that left Jisum deeply impressed. Li Guike finally stated the answer. Martial arts and medicine were what he offered to teach. Mujin's heart raced. A pinnacle realm martial artist, and one of the 3 great physicians as his master. This was a chance to learn both martial arts and medicine. If he became his disciple, even the Qingqing sect would not dare mistreat his family's clinic. Yet still, Mujin asked why such an offer was made to him. Li Guike replied that it was convenient to travel with a quick and skilled blacksmith. When Mujin pressed further, wondering if that was truly the only reason, Li Guike answered that in return, he would receive martial and medical knowledge. Mujin pointed out that such terms sounded more like a contractual relationship than a discipleship. Li Guike agreed that if he wished to call it that, he could. Then he suddenly tested Mujin, asking how one would treat a patient with weak kai, cold limbs, and shivering. Mujin answered that the fluid imbalance must first be treated, prescribing medicine made from poria and licorice root. Pleased, Li Guike declared that he had passed the test. Startled, Mujin wondered what he meant. Li Guike explained that memorizing the Shangqianlun and Nijing texts meant he could indeed learn martial arts. Mujin questioned what those texts had to do with martial arts, but Li Guike scolded the idea that strength alone mattered. He explained that fools who lacked understanding, no matter how much knowledge was handed to them, would stagnate as 2nd or 3rd-rate fighters. Mujin quietly repeated the words to himself, pondering their meaning. Li Guike continued, stating that such fools could never grasp the superiority of acupuncture needles. Mujin then asked if Li Guike thought he himself could become a first-rate martial artist. The eccentric physician replied that a student surpassing his master depended more on the master's teaching ability than on the student's talent, and left the words hanging for him to ponder. With that, Li Guike departed. Mujin returned home, excitement bubbling inside him. His mind reeled with the possibilities. Thinking that he could at least attain the pinnacle realm, he shouted to himself with joy, leaping about in happiness. It was then that his father appeared. Mujin quickly apologized for being late. His father placed a hand on his shoulder, his expression heavy with emotion. Tears welled up as he confessed his fear when he learned Mujin had been taken by the eccentric physician. He explained that when the man first entered his chamber, he thought him no more than a curious visitor. He asked if Mujin was safe. Mujin reassured him that the man was not as dangerous as the rumors claimed. His father admitted that Jae-sum had said the same and was relieved to see him unharmed. But then he questioned what had taken so long, since Mujin had only gone to lead him to the blacksmith. Mujin hesitated, then explained that the eccentric physician had offered to take him as a disciple. He had until tomorrow night to decide. His father froze at the words, silent. Concerned, Mujin asked why he had stopped. Without answering, his father hurried inside and returned with a pouch of silver, pressing it into Mujin's hands. Confused, Mujin asked what the money was for. His father told him simply, go. Mujin was stunned. He protested, saying he shouldn't leave when the clinic was already short-handed, and reminded him that the man's very title was the eccentric physician. He believed it had been no more than a passing whim. But his father was firm. The clinic would be fine. Now was the only chance he would have to leave. Mujin thought of his father in that moment, always believing him to be like a sturdy tree guarding their town. Yet those words made him realize something new. His father, too, had once been a boy. Under the shade of a tree. Mujin sat in meditation, his body surrounded by a faint blue aura as he practiced martial arts. He acknowledged that it had only been 2 days since he had begun, yet he had already succeeded in achieving small circulation. For the first time, he felt a sensation flowing through every corner of his body. Days passed 3, then 4, and though his energy was weak, a clear internal power steadily accumulated. Little by little, he recognized it as more than just growth. It was advancement. This, he thought, was the only chance I had to leave. And with quiet gratitude, he thanked his father. Above him, Li Guike sat perched on a tree branch. With playful ease, he tossed down a walnut that struck Mujin's head and teased him about being homesick. Startled, Mujin quickly explained that his internal energy felt stronger today than it had yesterday. Amused, Li Guike descended, remarking on the interesting times ahead. Full of confidence, Mujin admitted that he must indeed have talent. Li Guike studied him carefully, acknowledging his progress but dismissing it as only average compared to others. Mujin, however, smiled brightly, proud of himself. He pointed out that while others took 10 days to achieve small circulation, he had done so in just 2. Perhaps, he thought, the strange dream of Oyazi had granted him martial arts talent as well. Li Guike frowned at the nonsense but then handed him a sword. Heaping a simple wooden stake for himself, he challenged Mujin. If the boy could manage to cut even a piece of his clothing, he would carry him on his back all the way out of Sichuan province. Mujin grew nervous at the weight of the real blade in his hand. It was sharp, dangerous, something that could take a life. Yet, with a spark of ambition, he considered that after 10 days of advancement, perhaps he could land a surprise attack while Li Guique was off guard. Gathering his courage, he leaped forward to strike. Li Guique, scratching his ear, casually, chuckled at Mujin's boldness. With nothing but his wooden stick, he deflected the attack with ease. Mujin froze in disbelief, realizing that his sword had not left even a scratch. The stick had stopped him completely. With calm authority, Li Guique told him to bite down hard on his molars. Suddenly, a powerful aura surged from Li Guique's body. Mujin sensed it not merely a wave, but a massive current crashing into him. He was thrown back violently, struggling to catch his breath. His mind reeled at the experience. How did it feel? Li Guique asked. Receiving internal energy for the first time. Gasping with a mixture of anger and confusion, Mujin protested that it made no sense. He had believed the one with greater internal energy should always be the stronger. Li Guique only laughed, admitting that while that might sometimes be true, he himself possessed little energy and avoided relying on raw power. Martial arts, he explained, was not that simple. Why are you so desperate? Physician, he asked, as if you have someone you want to defeat. Mujin reminded him, you promised to make me into a peak master. With a sharp smack to his forehead, Li Guique corrected him. If strength was only about the quantity of internal energy, then beginning your training so late would make becoming a peak master impossible. But there are many paths to mastery. Even with weak energy and without flashy techniques. He reminded Mujin of how, when he had first received the internal energy, he had instinctively resisted by channeling force into his sword before withdrawing. That, too, was a valid path forward. He ordered Mujin to attack again, promising not to use internal energy this time. Fueled by determination, Mujin leaped once more with all his strength. For a fleeting moment, he felt as if his blade had the power to cut through Li Guique's wooden stick. But within seconds, everything changed. Overwhelmed by Li Guique's superior technique and presence, he was struck down, his body crashing to the ground. Li Guique pointed out coldly that even without using internal energy, Mujin would have died 3 times already. His rate of energy accumulation was far from fast. Breathless and defeated, Mujin realized the harsh truth. Once again, Li Guique rapped him on the head with his stick. He told Mujin that he lacked the special constitution needed to handle large amounts of internal energy. Yet, despite these shortcomings, the boy possessed his own unique advantages. His energy sense was sharp, his manipulation of force quick and precise. Though his swordsmanship was clumsy, and could only be considered third-rate, the way he instinctively infused internal force into his strikes already displayed the reactions of a second-rate martial artist. Li Guique reminded Mujin that even wandering aimlessly could become a path, and for just 10 days of training, his progress was excellent. Proud of himself, Mujin believed this meant he was already a second-rate martial artist. Li Guique immediately regretted praising him, while Mujin boldly declared himself a genius. Their attention shifted when Mujin spotted a figure lying among the bushes. Li Guique wondered if it was a wild beast, but Mujin noticed the 2 legs and realized it was a person. Li Guique observed the 3 knots on the man's attire, recognizing him as a branch master of the mountains. Mujin grew excited, assuming that a branch master meant someone close to being a peak master. As they approached, Li Guique questioned the man about any strange diseases spreading in the area. The man introduced himself as Hong Dan, branch master of Zhou village, also called Hong Ga. He explained that consecutive deaths had struck his village, and he had left to search for a physician elsewhere. For him, meeting them was a great fortune. On the road to Zhou village, Hong Dan spoke of their journey. He remarked that even for someone bad with directions, wandering for half a day on what should have been a 2-hour trip was strange. He admitted he had never once left the village in his entire life. Mujin was relieved that neither of them had caught the strange disease. Hong Dan agreed, saying that both he and his master had been fortunate. He described how it all began about a month ago when villagers first started falling ill. At first, it was mistaken for the usual seasonal cough, but soon more than half the village was affected, and 20 people had already died. Though many fled, Hong Dan refused to leave the village and its people behind. He stayed with his master to care for the patients alongside the village physician. But when the medicine ran out, his master promised to fetch herbs from the mountain, asking him to take care of the sick until he returned. Even after the promised date, his master had not come back, perhaps delayed by the difficulty of finding herbs. Hong Dan expressed gratitude for their presence, thankful for the guidance back home and hopeful for the help they could provide. Soon, the village came into view. At Zhou village, the guardian, Manjin Hong Ga, welcomed them and brought them inside a home where a sick child lay. Mujin carefully checked the boy's condition. From a brief touch of the pulse, he noted the heavy sweating, sticky skin, and a weak yet rapid heartbeat. The ears burned hot while the hands remained cool, showing that heat was rushing to the head. The parents explained that the child had vomited, complaining of dizziness and head pain. Mujin assessed the symptoms: damp heat, rapid pulse, steaming stagnation, irritability, and vomiting. It was an epidemic-type condition. Li Guique pressed for a clear diagnosis and treatment. Mujin reasoned that though it resembled summer heat fire poison, it lacked the characteristic sour odor. If untreated, the heat could rise to the head and cause blindness or even idiocy. Acupuncture at points such as Linghe, Weigan, Yanglingquan, Zuzhenli, and Niguan would be necessary, supported by medicines like Maidong, Galo, Jijing, and Binyu, depending on the progression. Li Guique smiled with pride, recognizing that Mujin had studied the inner classic thoroughly. He urged him to perform the acupuncture immediately. Nervously, Mujin prepared his needles, trying to recall the correct point and wondering if he could do it correctly on his first attempt. Before he acted, Li Guique used his own energy to guide the way. He revealed that teaching Mujin energy circulation had never been only for martial arts, but also for his growth as a physician. For someone like Mujin, a sharp energy sense and precise manipulation were an incredible blessing. Shocked, Mujin realized he could see inside the child's body with clarity, as if peering into a clear stream filled with pebbles. Within, he detected something far darker and evil energy festering. Li Guique confirmed his perception, and instructed him to proceed with acupuncture to observe the reaction. Mujin placed the needles at the necessary points, channeling his energy with care. Soon, the evil energy within the child dispersed and vanished. The villagers were astonished, praising him for his skill, and Li Guique looked at him with satisfaction. With a warm smile, he declared that this day had been one of great learning. Among all the faces Mujin had shown, this one, proud and fulfilled as a physician, was the best. In that moment, Mujin had truly become what he was meant to be. Yet, as the village settled into relief, a shadow loomed above. From the rooftop of a nearby house, a suspicious figure silently observed them. As the next scene unfolded, Li Guique and Mujin were walking alongside a man. During the walk, Mujin recalled the story of Dr. Yim. He remembered how, when the epidemic had broken out, the doctor had used all his savings to treat the villagers. The journey continued with this thought lingering in Mujin's mind, tying their present steps to the sacrifices made in the past. The man walking with them began to explain how Dr. Yim had once insisted that only rare and costly herbs from distant regions could help against the epidemic. He had taken all his money to the herbalist. Mujin, listening to this, felt that the doctor must be a good man. The man confirmed this, saying the villagers were moved by his sacrifice and pooled their funds so he would have enough when the herbalist arrived. Since no herbalist visited such a remote mountain village regularly, Dr. Yim had gone into the mountains himself to gather herbs. The man admitted he had disliked how Hongga often lazed around, but if he hadn't brought these doctors here, his own son would not have survived. He apologized for rambling out of worry for his sick child, then led them to his home. Though the house was empty, he welcomed them to rest there. Inside, Mujin and Li Guique settled in. On the floor, Li Guique noticed a doll lying abandoned. He picked it up and placed it carefully on the table. Mujin, watching him, reflected again that Dr. Yim truly seemed like a good man. Li Guique agreed, saying they would meet him soon. Mujin then wondered how such a kind village, blessed with good doctors and generous people, could still fall victim to a plague, especially when food and gifts had been offered to them so warmly. Li Guique reminded him to eat only what was necessary, and return the rest, as there was no need to add to the villagers' burden. Mujin agreed, though his thoughts returned to the strange illness. He asked about the nature of the plague. Li Guique admitted that while there were similar diseases, something about this one felt unfamiliar, perhaps even entirely new. Mujin was shocked that even one of the three great physicians could not identify it. But Li Guique told him there was much he did not know. For every truth discovered, many new mysteries always followed. Mujin admitted he had believed Li Guique knew every disease in existence, but the older man dismissed the idea, saying if he had known everything, he would not wander the world. As Mujin listened, he asked if there had ever been a disease Li Guique had longed to cure. The physician revealed there was one. He could cure it now, but at the time, he had been too late. Mujin asked what he meant, and just then, the distant sound of funeral cries drifted in from outside. Mujin felt a heaviness in his chest, realizing that medicine meant nothing without knowledge of the illness. He wished he could have known, wished he could have saved them. Li Guique then revealed the truth of his past. His wife and daughter had both burned with fever one day, their bodies marked by red spots. He had gone to a doctor, then even summoned a renowned physician from the next village, but neither could treat them. While he searched for another answer, both his wife and daughter died, their lives lost within 4 days of falling ill. Mujin expressed his condolences, but Li Guique did not call it a sorrowful story. Instead, he said the second half almost seemed laughable. After suffering and wandering away from his home, he had arrived at a small village days later, though it should have been only one. There, a country doctor with an untrustworthy face had heard his story and calmly prescribed medicine, asking only for 5 niang. The doctor had said that, given on time, the illness would have been easily cured. Li Guique, admitted he had possessed dozens of silver neon, enough to marry off his daughter multiple times. His family had not died from poverty, incompetence, or lack of herbs, but because one doctor did not know what another did. To him, that was the most laughable truth of all. That realization had driven him to become a doctor himself, determined to gather the wisdom of every physician into one place. Yet, after 30 years, even his wife and daughter's faces had grown faint in his memory. Mujin was stunned, sensing in the old man's latter a grief that sounded like a funeral wail. Later, Mujin prepared to investigate further. He told Li Guique he would search the village for the source of the illness. Li Guique allowed it, saying he would join shortly, but warned Mujin not to waste time. Mujin reassured him and went on his way. His search began at the pig house, then moved to a storage house, and finally to the first home struck by the sickness. He confirmed this with a villager, and thought deeply. The cold plague chilled the body while the hot plague burned it, yet both came from evil Kai that thrived in dark and foul places. Still, he could not sense such energy anywhere, not in the pens, the wells, or the cellars. An epidemic usually spread outward in a circle from its origin, but something here felt strange. Mujin asked Hongge if the disease had spread in order from the first illness, and Hongge confirmed that it had, with the west side affected before the east, and children before adults. The pieces seemed to fit and yet did not. Mujin asked what differences existed between the west and east sides of the village. Hongge explained that people often said the east had stronger yang energy while the west carried more yin. Mujin dismissed this, noting that he and Li Guique had entered from the west without seeing signs of plague. He then wondered why the children had fallen ill first. Realizing all they did was play together, Hongge mentioned their favorite play. Spot was by the creek on the west side. That struck Mujin. Could the creek water be the source? But there was also a well on the east, and it had not seemed murky. He asked Hongge if the east well was always dry, and the elder explained it only dried briefly in spring. Mujin pressed further, comparing the timing of the epidemic with the drying of the well, and Hongge admitted it had begun around the same time. The realization hit Mujin hard. If the east well had dried, the entire village would have turned to the creek water. It made sense then that the west side and the children were struck first. Soon after, he went with Hongdan and Hongga to the creek. Looking at the water, he noted it appeared clean, neither murky nor foul-smelling, but all evidence pointed to it. The only way forward was to test it. He lifted some water in his hand, feeling it carefully until he sensed something unusual. Following the clue, he pointed to the hills and led them forward. They climbed, passing rocky paths until an odor reached them. Mujin asked if the others smelled it too, and Hongdan confirmed the strange scent. The further they went, the stronger it became, until an unsettling aura covered the hills. The trees stood dead and lifeless, and Mujin wondered what terrible thing lay ahead to have caused such ruin. Moving forward, the ground beneath them began to feel soft. The soil grew weaker, and their feet sank into it. Mujin realized something was hidden beneath the earth and remarked, "There is indeed something buried in the soil." The scene shifted into a dim herb storeroom where Mujin was preparing medicine. He reflected on the nature of the placey storeroom filled with dried herbs and dead animals. Yet instead of decay, it carried a soft fragrance he once liked. It was a scent of death that still held traces of life, a fragrance that became someone's hope to survive. As these thoughts lingered, the present unfolded with Mujin and Hongdan digging through the soil. From beneath the ground, the rotting bodies of dead animals began to appear, leaving Mujin shocked at the sight. He realized that unlike the storeroom, this place reeked only of pure death, a stench that spread further death across the land. He could not help but wonder who was responsible, and why such cruelty was done. Mujin urged Hongdan and Hongga to dig everything up and move it far from the stream. The sight of countless corpses left Hongga trembling with fear, but together with Hongdan, he began pulling the carcasses out one by one. Watching this, Mujin muttered to himself that even a brief exposure to such an infective toxin could bring countless plagues. Unlike poisonous herbs or minerals that kill instantly, this was the work of someone who deeply understood the slow and lethal nature of an infective toxin. He realized that the timing of this act, coinciding with the well drying up, and the thorough preparations made behind it had only one purpose: extermination. The thought shook him to his core, and his body began trembling uncontrollably. At that moment, a man arrived carrying a blood-soaked bag. He questioned why someone would commit such an act on another's hard-earned land after all their struggles. Rage flared within Hongga when he recognized the man and shouted the name, Dr. Yim. Mujin froze in shock at hearing the name and pieced the truth together in his mind. Dr. Yim had known exactly what would happen by using such toxins. He had been fully aware of the village's condition, and he had only begun charging for treatment after the plague took hold. The horrifying realization struck Mujin. Dr. Yim was the true culprit, a healer who wore the face of compassion, but sought only death. A demon driven by greed. His vile hunger sought to devour Jolkan village entirely, and even when exposed, he remained brazen. Tang Mujin trembled with fury, thinking that such a man deserved nothing less than a brutal death. Jianji, overwhelmed with anger, confronted Dr. Yum directly, accusing him of creating the plague and pretending to cure it. Dr. Yum admitted without remorse that after living a life of good deeds, he only wanted to handle business for once. His words ignited Jianji's fury, and he launched at him, screaming that countless lives had already been lost. In his rage, he hurled the skull of an animal at Dr. Yum. But before it could reach him, one of Yum's men intercepted it, cutting the skull cleanly into 2 pieces. Dr. Yum responded with a twisted laugh, declaring that he felt no need to care about the dead. To him, the only truth was that these people had ruined his hard work, and now they would pay with their lives, whether it was today or tomorrow. He claimed he had always planned to throw them all into a pit, and now their turn had simply arrived earlier. His words dripped with malice as he demanded their deaths. Tang, Nujin, and Jianji were shaken with both anger and disbelief at his cruelty. Jianji roared, gripping a large stick in his hand, and declared himself the Begar sect guardian, Manji Honjin. His furious outburst drew mocking laughter from Dr. Yum. But his men were not as calm. They grew alarmed, realizing that someone of such status stood before them and quickly turned to question their master. They demanded to know why he had claimed only weaklings were present when in fact a Begar sect guardian stood in their path. Dr. Yum, now unsettled, stammered in confusion, claiming he had no idea. Jianji tightened his grip on the club and took his stance, setting himself for battle. His gaze locked on the lackey nearby, and he declared that he would begin counting. He promised to punish only one with his weapon, sparing others if possible. With firm resolve, he addressed Dr. Yum, insisting he wanted no more meaningless deaths in the village, begging him to leave peacefully before more blood was spilled. Tang Nujin, watching this, felt astonished. Elder Meijanji had frozen the enemy with his overwhelming presence alone. Tang urged Tang Nujin that now was his chance, telling him to run away. He swore to throw him across the stream so he could escape. Tang commanded that once Tang Nujin landed, he must not look back, but go straight to the village and tell them everything that had happened. Tang Nujin hesitated, apologizing for asking for such help. He pointed out that Han and Jianji were both a branch and guardian, true experts, and wondered if top-ranked warriors should really act this way. Tang dismissed the thought, saying rank meant nothing. What mattered was that he and his master must fight. Dr. Yum sneered at their determination, mocking them as nothing more than 2 Begars and a physician. He insisted this was the perfect time to strike, questioning if they planned to fight the entire village on their own. Tang Nujin's voice shook as he declared their intent to die fighting. Yet, confusion gnawed at him, wondering why these powerless Begars would go this far. Tang Nujin asked why they would not escape together. He reasoned that if the strange physician ran with them to the village, it might save lives, but admitted that with their skills, they could never protect him while fleeing. He insisted they should instead stand firm and keep the village safe. He explained that they had lived off the kindness of villagers their whole lives, but they were not ashamed. They had survived on what the villagers gave, and now that the time had come, they would fight for the people. That, he remembered, was the teaching of their master. Jianji began counting as he prepared to strike, his determination clear. Meanwhile, Dr. Yum turned to his followers with promises of erasing their gambling debts if they killed now. His voice rang with desperation and greed as he declared it was all or nothing, demanding they kill. The men roared back with agreement, shouting that there was no turning back now. In the midst of this chaos, Hong suddenly grabbed Tang Nujin by the waist and hurled him high into the air. Tang Nujin soared across the battlefield, stunned. His thoughts spiraling as he descended, he questioned himself, wondering if running away was truly the right thing to do. He asked himself what would happen to Han and Jianji if he simply fled. He doubted the enemy were true experts and believed that if he joined the fight, there might be a chance to win. But before he could decide, a man struck him mid-flight, sending him crashing to the ground. Tang Nujin scrambled up, shaken, and began to run. His mind in turmoil, he tried to convince himself this was not cowardice, but an act of respect, fulfilling their request to deliver Jolkan village's cry for help to the world. Yet another voice inside mocked him, calling it nothing but running. His heart ached as he thought of Master Meijenji and Hanjin, certain they would die fighting. He lamented his weakness, realizing he had only just begun to learn martial arts and had nothing real to offer in battle. If only he were a top-ranked master, he thought, he would not be running now. Doubt filled him as he wondered if Hanjin truly was a top-ranked master. In the midst of his flight, he stopped. His mind turned, his body trembled, and his decision solidified. He turned back, resolved to return to Han and Jianji. Tang Nujin ran with his heart pounding, memories flooding back. He remembered once helping a child who had been bullied by the Chongqing kids for being slow. That day he was beaten badly, but he had felt proud, like a hero standing against injustice. Yet now his thoughts were different. He wished the road ahead was longer, hoping the fight would already be over before he arrived. Cowardly thoughts filled his mind. But he knew if he turned back now, his life would become one of endless running away. Through the bushes, he caught sight of Jianji, and Han locked in a desperate battle with several men. They were battered and bleeding, and Tang Nujin's mind raced with panic, wondering how he could help. The enemies struck them ruthlessly, but still Jianji and Hong refused to surrender. One of the men sneered at their resistance, mocking them for fighting to the bitter end. Jianji shouted back with defiance, saying that crawling through filth or corpses was still better than crawling through trash. The enemy warned that both master and disciple were already dead men walking and taunted Jianji, calling his determination pathetic. But Jianji dismissed the notion of giving up as nonsense. The fight grew fiercer. Jianji tried to escape, but one man chased after him with an axe, yelling for his death. Fear gripped Hong, yet it only fueled his strength as he fought harder against another attacker. Jianji threw dirt into his opponent's face to strike back, but the man's axe landed against his back, and Jianji cried out in pain. Hong froze, his heart itching as memories of their time together rushed back. Then rage consumed him. He seized the axe and struck down his enemy. Another foe lunged at him from behind. But before the blow landed, a rock flew and struck the man's face, thrown by Tang Mujin. The man stumbled, cursing Tang Mujin as a pathetic bastard. Hong took the chance and killed the opponent with the axe. Then another assailant rushed forward with a knife, charging straight at Tang Mujin. He mocked him as a physician's brat, saying he should have kept running instead of coming back to die. Tang Mujin stood frozen as the blade neared, but in that moment, Li Chong appeared. With a swift motion, he slit the attacker's throat, ending the threat instantly. He calmly stated that these men were the ones behind the plate. Tang Mujin, trembling with fury, declared that Dr. Yum was the true culprit. Li Chong asked if that was really so. The surviving enemies turned on Tang Mujin, kicking and beating him. Dr. Yum fell to his knees, begging desperately for his life. He promised to give them medicine stronger than anything in Jolkan village, trying to bargain with words of false hope. He spoke of the black peony, an elite elixir almost as great as the day one, a legendary flower known as the hero's flower. He offered it in exchange for his life and revealed the true black peony hidden inside a cave. Tang Mujin's rage boiled over. He nearly struck the doctor down, furious that lives had been traded so cheaply for such a poisonous treasure. But Li Chong stopped him, explaining the truth. The real black peony grew by feeding on death, which was why Yum had gathered so many bodies. Any ordinary person who touched it would be consumed by its energy and die. If the villagers had all perished, their corpses would have become food for the flower. Tang Mujin realized that even he and Li Chong might have been intended as sacrifices. Perhaps Dr. Yum had planned all along to stall for time, pretending to harvest and process it, only to later poison them. Yum denied it in a panic, insisting that processing the black peony was extremely difficult. He claimed he had intended to offer it to them. Tang Mujin pointed out how strange it was for a village doctor to hold such deep knowledge. Though Yum dismissed it as nothing more than a cheap trick, Li Chong calmly picked up the black peony, saying it was too bad because he was not an ordinary person. Yum panicked, warning that bare-handed contact with the flower meant certain death. But before he could say more, Li Chong moved with cold precision. Without hesitation, he slit Dr. Yum's throat, ending his life in silence. Then, standing over the corpse, he declared that matters of life and death would be his to decide. Li Chong grew irritated, questioning why trashy doctors kept appearing. He dismissed them as riffraff, who believed learning medicine automatically made them real physicians. Tang Mujin hesitated, unsure if everything was truly okay. But Li Chong brushed it aside. He explained that his nickname did not come from gambling. He would absorb the toxins from the corpse and the black peony himself, instructing Tang Mujin to step back and take Hongyi to safety. Tang Mujin agreed. Li Chong sat down, focusing his energy to draw out the poison. The toxins were powerful, but he endured. Soon, he purified the flower infected with poison, restoring it to a clean form. Tang Mujin had not even realized the process was happening. Handing the flower to Tang Mujin, Li Chong assured him it was now safe to consume without side effects. Tang Mujin thanked him. Li Chong told him that by uncovering the physician's plot, Tang Mujin was more than qualified. Tang Mujin disagreed, insisting he was not qualified at all. He had run away, returned only to throw a rock, and acted merely out of fear of being called a coward. Li Chong countered, pointing out that even Hongyi looked at Tang Mujin as if he truly was qualified. Returning after running away was harder than facing things head-on. Such a choice could only be made by confronting duty and accepting mistakes. Running, he said, was not shameful. Only an idiot would never run. What mattered was not turning away from duty. He laughed at himself for offering too much wisdom, joking that Tang Mujin probably would not even understand such profound words. Tang Mujin ate the flower. Li Chong was shocked, asking if he had really eaten it just like that. Tang Mujin nodded, thinking it was the right time. Li Chong scolded him, asking why he would eat it now. Tang Mujin defended himself, saying it seemed like the right moment. The three of them moved forward again, with Hong carrying the injured Jianji on his shoulder. Li Chong continued to scold Tang Mujin for consuming the elixir without knowing the proper cultivation method, questioning if someone had been about to steal it. Tang Mujin explained that Li Chong had not said much, so he thought it meant to take it immediately. Li Chong reminded him to follow the training of this Quan Wu divine art. Stand steady, control his breathing, and mind his posture. Tang Mujin asked for an explanation again. Li Chong sighed, calling him both smart and an idiot. He explained carefully, walk while drawing internal strength along the foot tae and spleen meridian, ensuring the entire soul touch the ground. Move slowly, mixing the energy from the lower body and lungs, creating an axis through the Shanton, Qihai, and Huiyan points. Those three were the unchangeable foundation of this Quan Wu divine art. The rest was transformation, guiding the black peony's power through the axis again, slowly. Tang Mujin claimed he understood, and was already doing it. Li Chong shouted at him to stop talking back and do it properly. Soon, a powerful aura began to flow from Tang Mujin's body. Li Chong decided to gather his own energy before they reached the village. He noted that with proper training, Tang Mujin could truly control the power. Tang Mujin marveled at the tremendous strength of the black peony. But Li Chong dismissed it, saying he was only licking the skin of an apple and mistaking it for real power. Tang Mujin still had a long way to go, and he was instructed to practice this Quan Wu divine art whenever possible. Then Li Chong told him to prove he was fine by dragging one of the men. Tang Mujin clutched his stomach, still complaining. The group returned to Jolkan village with the medicine for the disease. The villagers rejoiced, their happiness overflowing. From a distance, Hong bowed deeply, silently expressing gratitude to Tang Mujin and Li Chong. Later, Tang Mujin practiced martial arts. Li Chong scolded him, warning that if dust entered the decoction, it would ruin the medicine. He teased Tang Mujin, asking if he was protesting for sword training. He ordered him to pack quickly as they had a long way to travel. Tang Mujin protested, wondering why they had to leave when patients were still there. He suggested staying 5 more days to check on everyone. Li Chong dismissed the idea. He never planned to come to Jolkan village in the first place and had only stopped because Hong Ji asked. Tang Mujin was surprised, realizing he had not seen Hong since the night before. Li Chong explained that Hong had buried Elder Mei Jinji, and was probably starving somewhere as usual. Tang Mujin was shocked that such a hero who saved the village would starve. He thought to himself that in the Beggars Guild, this was common, no matter how just the reason. A beggar who once begged for handouts but ended up killing people, even martial artists, would not be seen as a hero. But shared that a child named Soyan had given him some food. Tang Mujin was curious, and asked about Soyan. Explained that he was a little kid who lived under the same bridge. He had no appetite at all but could not refuse something given by a fellow beggar. Hearing this, Tang Mujin patted him lightly on the back, half chiding him for taking food when he wasn't even part of the beggar sect anymore, saying he was ripping off a little kid. He then told Hong to come with him. When Hong asked where, Tang Mujin simply replied that they were going to wash the beggar's stench off him. Night fell, and the two of them were seen at a lively place, eating and drinking together. Tang Mujin raised his cup with cheer, declaring that they should eat and drink until they died. A woman seated nearby found them noisy, remarking about kids these days. Tang Mujin dug into his food, exclaiming how delicious it was. Hong countered sharply, saying it was hardly delicious since Tang Mujin had looked ready to puke. Tang Mujin laughed, reminding him that he had not earned his reputation as one of the 3 great physicians of the land by gambling. Hong retorted that he was going to get scolded like an old man. Tang Mujin, unfazed, warned that if Hong left any food, he'd strike him with a secret lethal palm to the solar plexus, telling him to just drink up for now. The two of them ate with joy, finishing plenty of food. But then Hong suddenly asked how they were going to pay. He admitted he had lived as a beggar all his life and had never paid for anything. Tang Mujin told him simply that payment was made with money. Laughing nervously, Hong wondered how much it would be, then confessed he didn't have a single coin. To his shock, Tang Mujin admitted he didn't either. Hong panicked, yelling in disbelief, asking what they were going to do since the place was run by the beggar sect. Tang Mujin shouted back that it didn't matter, for he was the great eccentric physician Li Chong, one of the 3 great physicians of the land. Hong told him to stop joking around, but Tang Mujin only laughed harder, boasting that at his level, there was nothing to worry about. His laughter grew louder until suddenly he stood up, walked to the woman sitting behind them, and pulled out a knife. With a sharp grin, he declared that the payment would start now. Tang Mujin's knife startled the young woman, fear flashing across her face. Instead of threatening her, Tang Mujin pressed the blade against the wall, carving a large circle. Hong, shocked, asked what he was doing. From the back, drunken voices cheered and laughed, calling for more. A man stepped forward, confused, and asked Tang Mujin what he was doing. Tang Mujin's angry glare made the man panic and call for guards. Ignoring everyone, Tang Mujin began slashing wildly at the wall like a madman. Hong, completely lost, struggled to understand his intentions. Another man demanded to know who Tang Mujin was, scolding him for acting disgracefully even while drunk. Tang Mujin didn't respond and instead began carving with precision. He tossed his drink high into the air, stunning the onlookers. Catching it, he drank deeply and declared that this was his way of paying the bill. Nervously, a man agreed, saying they had only asked because the music had stopped. He then turned to the young woman, urging her to play, as breaking the hero's mood was bad luck. Music resumed, and everyone watched in awe as Tang Nugent's knife strokes formed the image of a magnificent goddess on the wall. He proudly announced he would settle the night's expenses with this work. The old man's words echoed that with such talent, people would always welcome them anywhere. The effect of the 1,000-armed Guan Yin was overwhelming. The entire crowd was captivated, amazed by his artistry. Meanwhile, shared dumplings with a little girl who gratefully thanked him. Watching this, Tang Nugent thought to himself that was finally smiling. Sincerely. Later that night, both of them rested in their room. Asked if Tang Nugent was going to Ju's place again. Tang Nugent replied no, deciding to rest after days of running about. When asked if wanted to go, dismissed it, mentioning only the heavy rain. Tang Nugent chuckled in agreement. Suddenly, a voice called for outside. He and Tang Nugent stepped out to find So Samu, who anxiously revealed that Soyeon was missing. So Samu explained she was timid and always mentioned her whereabouts, making it unlikely she would wander far, especially on such a rainy day. He suspected the bandits from Jang Sanji. Asked if he was sure. So Samu explained that children had been disappearing for some time. At first, people thought they drowned, but witnesses had seen bandits abducting them. Rumors spread that unorthodox martial artists were taking children for evil purposes. If Soyeon was taken, she might already be harmed. Placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, promising to investigate. He told him not to worry and to wait a little, earning So Samu's heartfelt gratitude. Later, the branch leader spoke to promising to report the matter but warning him not to expect much. Questioned why not, arguing that as the Begar sect, they should act. The leader admitted they should, but without proof, they could not risk clashing with bandits, especially now with the monsoon season at its peak. Priorities were elsewhere. He explained that every spring, the sect braced itself during the rains. This year was even worse. If the rain continued, the Yunks would flood, destroying homes and causing deaths. To reduce the damage, every member was building embankments, leaving no one to investigate. Still, he would report it to the higher ranks. Soon after, So Samu expressed his frustration to refusing to believe in the sect's promises. He accused them of treating outsiders like animals, only building embankments for those above and blocking common people's roads. Insisted that martial artists should still uphold chivalry. So Samu countered bitterly, pointing out that bandits and unorthodox fighters were martial artists too, yet none showed chivalry. He reminded that in over 10 years, the Begar sect had never clashed with bandits, not even once. He argued that the sect would never risk everything for a Begar no one cared about, caring more about keeping their new clothes clean and preserving their image. Disillusioned, reflected that everything had been lies. He told himself he had no reason to feel guilty. No one was obligated to help. What he had done already was enough. His duty had ended back in Jolkan village, and even that was just false bravado passed down by a liar. With these thoughts, he turned to leave. But before he could go, an old woman stopped him. She asked if he was searching for Mahjong-ji, introducing herself as Old Lady Yong. She questioned his relationship with him. Asked why. She wanted to know, explaining that he had heard Mahjong-gi was a thief who ran away. He asked if she had lost something valuable to him. Old Lady Yong firmly denied it. She explained that Mahjong-gi was not a thief by nature, not someone who would steal. Then she suggested something shocking, that what he had stolen was perhaps not an object, but a person. Hearing this, was left stunned. Was shocked when Lady Yong revealed that Mahjong-gi had not stolen an object, but a person. She explained that it must have been about 20 years ago during the conflict in Chongqing between the Just faction and the Dark faction. The current Central Region Submaster, Hunmei, belonged to the Just faction, while the Submaster Yubani was of the Dark faction. Normally, whether a Begar's clothes were clean or dirty would not matter to anyone. But even trivial annoyances, when they piled up, turned into life or death grudges. One day, a huge fight broke out. In the chaos, Yubani was killed. And after that, no one could stop the violence. The Dark faction was driven out of Chongqing that very day, and it was then that Mahjong-gi ran away with Yubani's son. When asked what the boy's name was, Lady Yong replied that it was Jong. Upon hearing the name, fell completely silent. Lady Yong assumed from his reaction that he was not there because of the son. If it was not about that, then she had no more information. She told that was all she knew about Mahjong-gi and began to leave. Before going, she asked that if never met him, he should give him her regards, and if Mahjong-gi returned to Chongqing, he should be told to find her. When she turned back, she saw that had already disappeared. Soon after, stood alone by the sea, consumed with turmoil. He realized that everything had been a lie. Even the name, the Fourth Circle guardianship, and the martial arts, everything had been false. Tears filled his eyes as he asked himself why. Overcome with anguish, Hong reached into the water, trying desperately to pull something out. His hands finally grasped a hemp cord. But as he held it, he suddenly sank deeper into the sea. Underwater, his mind spiraled with grief. He thought of how the Begar-sect's fourth circle guardian's cord was tied to uphold the rules, tied to protect people, tied by someone who wanted to protect him, tied by someone who bound themselves with a guardian's cord. In the depths, Hong caught sight of the rope. He seized it tightly, and tried to pull himself upward. Just then, he saw someone coming down toward him. Moments later, it was revealed to be Tang Mujin, who grabbed him and dragged him back to the surface. Both collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. Tang Mujin scolded him furiously, asking if he had caught some disease that would kill him if his clothes got dirty, calling him an idiot for swimming in such weather. Only coughed violently in response. After a moment, still clutching the rope in his hand, Han pleaded with Tang Mujin for help, just once. Tang Mujin retorted that he had already saved his life, and demanded to know what more he wanted. Ong declared that they were going to rescue Soyan from the bandits. Shocked, Tang Mujin asked if rescuing someone was really the favor Han was asking for and if there wasn't an easier one he could request. Later, near the seaside, workers were busy at their tasks while Tang Mujin and Han hid behind a rock, observing. Tang Mujin asked if Han had a plan. Ong admitted he did not, and wondered if Tang Mujin intended to face them all head-on. Tang Mujin assured him he did not. Ong explained that they would sneak in quietly, find Soyan, and escape. First, they needed to learn where she was being kept. Tang Mujin guessed she must be in one of the buildings and suggested they sneak in quietly and search. Ong shot back that sneaking was impossible because Tang Mujin's clothes stood out too much. Tang Mujin asked if rolling in mud to dirty himself would help. Ong wondered if dirt alone could make him look like a bandit. Tang Mujin then suggested stripping everything off, but Han replied he would rather build flood barriers. Just then, voices came from behind them. Bandits on patrol passed by, complaining that they would rather build flood barriers than patrol in such weather. One of them remarked that even this was better than having to endure the squad leader's temper while building. Hearing this, Han and Tang Mujin were startled. Tang Mujin thought nervously that bandits were patrolling too, and fighting here would be the worst move. He urged himself to wait quietly for them to pass. But then panic rose. If they stayed there, they would be discovered. He wondered if they should hide under the bridge but realized there was not enough room for both of them. Tang Mujin glanced at Han, who gestured with his hands. Tang Mujin decided to hide behind the rock while Han went to the other side. The heavy rain would cover up most sounds. As the two bandits approached, Han signaled to Tang Mujin, who thought with relief that the plan was working and sneaking in was not so hard after all. But suddenly, Han leaped out and attacked the two bandits. They dodged his strike and turned to glare at him angrily. Tang Mujin, watching from his hiding place, could only think in shock, calling him an idiot for blowing their cover. But shared that a child named Soyan had given him some food. Tang Mujin was curious and asked about Soyan. Han explained that he was a little kid who lived under the same bridge. He had no appetite at all but could not refuse something given by a fellow beggar. Hearing this, Tang Mujin patted him lightly on the back, half chiding him for taking food when he wasn't even part of the beggar's sect anymore, saying he was ripping off a little kid. He then told Han to come with him. When Han asked where, Tang Mujin simply replied that they were going to wash the beggar's stench off him. Night fell, and the two of them were seen at a lively place, eating and drinking together. Tang Mujin raised his cup with cheer, declaring that they should eat and drink until they died. A woman seated nearby found them noisy, remarking about kids these days. Tang Mujin dug into his food, exclaiming how delicious it was. Han countered sharply, saying it was hardly delicious since Tang Mujin had looked ready to puke. Tang Mujin laughed, reminding him that he had not earned his reputation as one of the three great physicians of the land by gambling. Han retorted that he was going to get scolded like an old man. Tang Mujin, unfazed, warned that if Han left any food, he'd strike him with a secret lethal palm to the solar plexus, telling him to just drink up for now. The two of them ate with joy, finishing plenty of food. But then Han suddenly asked how they were going to pay. He admitted he had lived as a beggar all his life and had never paid for anything. Tang Mujin told him simply that payment was made with money. Laughing nervously, Han wondered how much it would be, then confessed he didn't have a single coin. To his shock, Tang Mujin admitted he didn't either. Han panicked, yelling in disbelief, asking what they were going to do since the place was run by the beggar sect. Tang Mujin shouted back that it didn't matter, for he was the great eccentric physician Li Chom, one of the three great physicians of the land. Ong told him to stop joking around, but Tang Mujin only laughed harder, boasting that at his level, there was nothing to worry about. His laughter grew louder until suddenly he stood up, walked to the woman sitting behind them, and pulled out a knife. With a sharp grin, he declared that the payment would start now. Tang Mujin's knife startled the young woman, fear flashing across her face. Instead of threatening her, Tang Mujin pressed the blade against the wall, carving a large circle. Ong, shocked, asked what he was doing. From the back, Drunken voices cheered and laughed, calling for more. A man stepped forward, confused, and asked Tang Mujin what he was doing. Tang Mujin's angry glare made the man panic and call for guards. Ignoring everyone, Tang Mujin began slashing wildly at the wall like a madman. Completely lost, struggled to understand his intentions. Another man demanded to know who Tang Mujin was, scolding him for acting disgracefully even while drunk. Tang Mujin didn't respond, and instead began carving with precision. He tossed his drink high into the air, stunning the onlookers. Catching it, he drank deeply and declared that this was his way of paying the bill. Nervously, a man agreed, saying they had only asked because the music had stopped. He then turned to the young woman, urging her to play, as breaking the hero's mood was bad luck. Music resumed, and everyone watched in awe as Tang Mujin's knife strokes formed the image of a magnificent goddess on the wall. He proudly announced he would settle the night's expenses with this work. The old man's words echoed that with such talent, people would always welcome him anywhere. The effect of the 1,000-armed Guan Yin was overwhelming. The entire crowd was captivated, amazed by his artistry. Meanwhile, Hom shared dumplings with a little girl who gratefully thanked him. Watching this, Tang Mujin thought to himself that Hom was finally smiling sincerely. Later that night, both of them rested in their room. Hom asked if Tang Mujin was going to Ju's place again. Tang Mujin replied no, deciding to rest after days of running about. When asked if Hom wanted to go, Hom dismissed it, mentioning only the heavy rain. Tang Mujin chuckled in agreement. Suddenly, a voice called for Hom outside. He and Tang Mujin stepped out to find So Samu, who anxiously revealed that Soyeon was missing. So Samu explained she was timid and always mentioned her whereabouts, making it unlikely she would wander far, especially on such a rainy day. He suspected the bandits from Jang Sanchi. Hom asked if he was sure. So Samu explained that children had been disappearing for some time. At first, people thought they drowned, but witnesses had seen bandits abducting them. Rumors spread that unorthodox martial artists were taking children for evil purposes. If Soyeon was taken, she might already be harmed. Hom placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, promising to investigate. He told him not to worry, and to wait a little, earning So Samu's heartfelt gratitude. Later, the branch leader spoke to Hom, promising to report the matter but warning him not to expect much. Hom questioned why not, arguing that as the Begar's sect, they should act. The leader admitted they should, but without proof, they could not risk clashing with bandits, especially now with the monsoon season at its peak. Priorities were elsewhere. He explained that every spring, the sect braced itself during the rains. This year was even worse. If the rain continued, the Yunks would flood, destroying homes and causing deaths. To reduce the damage, every member was building embankments, leaving no one to investigate. Still, he would report it to the higher ranks. Soon after, So Samu expressed his frustration to Hom, refusing to believe in the sect's promises. He accused them of treating outsiders like animals, only building embankments for those above and blocking common people's roads. Hom insisted that martial artists should still uphold chivalry. So Samu countered bitterly, pointing out that bandits and unorthodox fighters were martial artists, too, yet none showed chivalry. He reminded Hom that in over 10 years, the Begar sect had never clashed with bandits, not even once. He argued that the sect would never risk everything for a Begar no one cared about, caring more about keeping their new clothes clean and preserving their image. Hom, disillusioned, reflected that everything had been lies. He told himself he had no reason to feel guilty. No one was obligated to help. What he had done already was enough. His duty had ended back in Jokan village, and even that was just false bravado passed down by a liar. With these thoughts, he turned to leave. But before he could go, an old woman stopped him. She asked if he was searching for Mahjong Ji, introducing herself as Old Lady Yom. She questioned his relationship with him. Hom asked why. She wanted to know, explaining that he had heard Mahjong Ji was a thief who ran away. He asked if she had lost something valuable to him. Old Lady Yong firmly denied it. She explained that Mahjong Ji was not a thief by nature, not someone who would steal. Then she suggested something shocking, that what he had stolen was perhaps not an object, but a person. Hearing this, Hom was left stunned. Hom was shocked when Lady Yom revealed that Mahjong Ji had not stolen an object, but a person. She explained that it must have been about 20 years ago during the conflict in Chongqing between the Just faction and the Dark faction. The current Central Region Submaster, Hunmei, belonged to the Just faction, while the Submaster Yubami was of the Dark faction. Normally, whether a Begar's clothes were clean or dirty would not matter to anyone. But even trivial annoyances, when they piled up, turned into life or death grudges. One day, a huge fight broke out. In the chaos, Yubani was killed. And after that, no one could stop the violence. The Dark faction was driven out of Chongqing that very day, and it was then that Mahjong Ji ran away with Yubami's son. When Hom asked what the boy's name was, Lady Yom replied that it was Homjong. Upon hearing the name, Hom fell completely silent. Lady Yom assumed from his reaction that he was not there because of the son. If it was not about that, Then she had no more information. She told Hong that was all she knew about Mahjong-ji, and began to leave. Before going, she asked that if Hong ever met him, he should give him her regards, and if Mahjong-ji returned to Chongqing, he should be told to find her. When she turned back, she saw that Hong had already disappeared. Soon after, Hong stood alone by the sea, consumed with turmoil. He realized that everything had been a lie. Even the name, the fourth circle guardianship, and the martial arts, everything had been false. Tears filled his eyes as he asked himself why. Overcome with anguish, Hong reached into the water, trying desperately to pull something out. His hands finally grasped a hemp cord. But as he held it, he suddenly sank deeper into the sea. Underwater, his mind spiraled with grief. He thought of how the Big Arsek's fourth circle guardian's cord was tied to uphold the rules, tied to protect people, tied by someone who wanted to protect him, tied by someone who bound themselves with a guardian's cord. In the depths, Hong caught sight of the rope. He seized it tightly, and tried to pull himself upward. Just then, he saw someone coming down toward him. Moments later, it was revealed to be Tang Mujin, who grabbed him, and dragged him back to the surface. Both collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. Tang Mujin scolded him furiously, asking if he had caught some disease that would kill him if his clothes got dirty, calling him an idiot for swimming in such weather. Hong only coughed violently in response. After a moment, still clutching the rope in his hand, Hong pleaded with Tang Mujin for help, just once. Tang Mujin retorted that he had already saved his life and demanded to know what more he wanted. Hong declared that they were going to rescue Soyan from the bandits. Shocked, Tang Mujin asked if rescuing someone was really the favor Hong was asking for and if there wasn't an easier one he could request. Later, near the seaside, workers were busy at their tasks while Tang Mujin and Hong hid behind a rock, observing. Tang Mujin asked if Hong had a plan. Hong admitted he did not and wondered if Tang Mujin intended to face them all head-on. Tang Mujin assured him he did not. Hong explained that they would sneak in quietly, find Soyan, and escape. First, they needed to learn where she was being kept. Tang Mujin guessed she must be in one of the buildings and suggested they sneak in quietly and search. Hong shot back that sneaking was impossible because Tang Mujin's clothes stood out too much. Tang Mujin asked if rolling in mud to dirty himself would help. Hong wondered if dirt alone could make him look like a bandit. Tang Mujin then suggested stripping everything off, but Hong replied he would rather build flood barriers. Just then, voices came from behind them. Bandits on patrol passed by, complaining that they would rather build flood barriers than patrol in such weather. One of them remarked that even this was better than having to endure the squad leader's temper while building. Hearing this, Hong and Tang Mujin were startled. Tang Mujin thought nervously that bandits were patrolling too, and fighting here would be the worst move. He urged himself to wait quietly for them to pass. But then panic rose. If they stayed there, they would be discovered. He wondered if they should hide under the bridge but realized there was not enough room for both of them. Tang Mujin glanced at Hong, who gestured with his hands. Tang Mujin decided to hide behind the rock while Hong went to the other side. The heavy rain would cover up most sounds. As the two bandits approached, Hong signaled to Tang Mujin, who thought with relief that the plan was working and sneaking in was not so hard after all. But suddenly, Hong leaped out and attacked the two bandits. They dodged his strike and turned to glare at him angrily. Tang Mujin, watching from his hiding place, could only think in shock, calling him an idiot for blowing their cover.